week into quarantine. The days have kind of lost all sense of distinction. There's no real difference between a weekday and a weekend day anymore. Um, every day is sort of a rainy weekend day with the whole family inside, aside from a couple of breaks where we take the kids out to play with bubbles in the yard, maybe take them for a short walk. A week into the quarantine, the 8-year-old has found solace in the structure that Camille put together. She put together some daily schedules for the kids, and he is so sort of structure and familiarity oriented that he gravitated towards it immediately and has been, I think, actually better behaved at home than he has been in a long time, as long as I can remember. Solace in structure. So good for him, and gravitate towards what you need to get through a difficult time. The 3-year-old, on the other hand, has gone feral. We were in the middle of potty training when the quarantine started, and while she's still doing that pretty regularly, she hasn't figured out the pooping in the potty yet, or why that is a thing that needs to happen when she's got a perfectly good set of underwear that she can crap in. I mean, she doesn't want to pee in that because that would be gross, but it's great for catching a turd. She's also, and I blame myself for this, both genetically and behaviorally, she thinks belches are hilarious, and she's figured out how to belch on her own. And I made the mistake of laughing after she belched twice in a row at the table, which means that now she is belching constantly like a little a wind-up burp machine. Just this little goblin running around expelling gases. We've had to give her timeouts because she's burping too much. She is my daughter. The state, Washington State, isn't officially locked down yet, but based on the speech our governor gave yesterday, Governor Inslee, we may be locked down officially. He basically sort of did the principal thing, and he's like, listen, class, if the few of you who are cutting it up can't get it through your heads that you need to stay home and socially distance, I'm going to have to put the entire class on lockdown. Not a perfect analogy, but it's kind of how it feels like. And probably would be for the best. And there's not much to do anyway right now. The universities and schools are closed. Bars and restaurants, playgrounds, any place you would normally gather, theaters and the like. Only essential spots are open here anymore, so the clinics and the hospitals, grocery stores and pharmacies. I don't know if the cannabis dispensaries are considered essential. They are, I think, in California and Colorado. Those states are a bit more progressive than we are on that front, at least. I have no co-host this month, as you might have guessed by now, because we're under quarantine. We've been keeping in touch with family and friends online. A lot of time spent online. Like I said, the days are kind of blending into one another right now. There's not a distinction between a weekday and a weekend day. We're still working, That's been the odd thing, is I am a freelancer and I work from home most of the time anyway. So every day has sort of become a weekend day. We do have a bit of a schedule. We try to divide the day. My wife and I get the morning from about 9 to 1 to work, and then she gets the afternoon. And while we're the primary parent, we handle all the meals and the entertainment and the mediating disputes between the children. And of course, the kids just want to be with whoever is not the primary parent at that time. We've actually set up a secondary workstation up in our bedroom. There's room for both of us in our little office. That's where the family computers are. But like with a pair of goblins underfoot, it's hard to get any real work done. So we have a folding table upstairs in our bedroom. I'm sitting there now, looking out over the city, which has been so oddly quiet and empty in the times that I've gone out in the last few days. It has had some odd benefits. The silence is nice. I can hear the birds more. I can hear the sea lions barking and arguing down at the marina on their docks. The pollution is clearing up in places. You can see this on atmospheric maps above northern Italy and China, above Los Angeles, clear skies for first time in many years, or extended clear skies, I should say. And there's been reports from Venice that without the constant traffic in the canals, fish and swans and dolphins have returned. The waters have been clearer than the locals can remember for any time in 60 years. And it reminds me of the story of the mayfly and the sycamore, or maybe it was the sequoia. It doesn't matter, whatever aged giant tree you like to go with, where a person comes up to a mayfly that's perched on this gorgeous ancient tree and asks the mayfly, "Is this tree alive?" And the mayfly says, "No, I've been here my entire life and I've never seen it move." We use our own lifetimes and our own experience, unfortunately, as a gauge of what is normal, and thus don't have a sense of how things used to be. A sky free of insects or birdsong, murky waters in the canals, or a sky perpetually shrouded by fog or smog, you think of as the default. And I think there's maybe some inklings of hope there, that once we emerge from this, however we do, we'll have learned a few things, or at least experienced a few things on a societal level, that the world as it is doesn't have to be the way that it is. Working from home is an option. It's clear we need better preparation, universal health care. We're all in this together. This isn't really a platform for espousing for political change. It's just things that have been more at the forefront of my thoughts here as I continue to wander with no co-host to drag me back to the topic at hand. It's like every generation has to figure things out for itself, has to learn the same lessons over and over again. And maybe this can be a watershed moment for us. And then again, maybe in 30 years, we've become our generation, the Gen X generation's grandparents, where we're still, stockpiling food and toilet paper, and our grandkids wonder, why the heck do you have so much of this stuff in storage? I know there was that thing that happened when you were young and that it shaped you, but I think this is a bit much. And then, of course, they'll have to learn their own lessons when the next big, unavoidable crisis that you can't hide from, it's going to find you wherever you go, hits. It's weird that just a few months ago we were only worried about the world being on fire and fascism ascendant, and here we are dealing with a global pandemic at the earliest stages of it. We don't know how long this is going to take, but schools are closed here in Washington State until at least the end of April. It's likely they'll be closed for the rest of the year. My summer classes at the university have been canceled, so we're wondering about, how do we make up the projected income we were going to gather from that. My wife's events are all summer-based, all travel-based, people coming to Washington to bid on wonderful lots of wine that local vintners are only making a few vintages of. A lot of the similar wine auctions in the country are either being postponed or canceled outright. So we'll see. It's an odd time, and I got to say, this society seems to be responding to it. We'll see what kind of aid comes through, but we're also seeing how we have to figure out how we can, reconfigure the finances to get through this unexpected hump. We've started thinking of the days in almost a Star Trek sort of way. Here we are in the Starship House with our separate workstations and quarters and shared spaces. We have the shuttle bay with the vehicle we take on little away missions to restock. And honestly, our destination at this point is unknown. We don't know how long it'll take us to get there, but when we arrive, it will be at a different world. Hi, welcome to Coddiwomple, the podcast where we meander purposefully towards a vague destination. I'm your host, Matt Vancil. Once again, no co-host today because we are in quarantine from the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Well, I guess I should be asking myself these questions now. Usually we go after the introduction, we go into, what are you working on? Is there anything you want to promote? And one thing we need to address, this was just not even 10 days ago, the only thing we could think about was the cancellation of the shoot in April of Journey Quest Season 4. The studio made the right call in, we have to, we can't shoot there. Not only is it a gathering of several dozen people in close concentration for 12 to 14 hours a day, but we would have people, flying up, actors flying up from Los Angeles, backers flying in from all over the country, potentially the other parts of the world, to do their on-screen cameos and be in the backgrounds of certain shots, and that's just not something that is safe right now. It definitely isn't in the type of gathering that would be acceptable under these circumstances. And the studio made the right call in canceling the shoot and sent out that email. If any of you are JQ4 backers, that we don't know how this is going to play out. It's more than a matter of just rescheduling the shoot, because so much of the money from the budget has already been spent on location rentals, on creation of costumes and props, and people have already taken time off from work. And the way that the entertainment industry works, in particular up here, is our shoots are scheduled typically for the spring or the fall, and not for the summer, because summer is when the big box productions come to town, and with their higher wages, and people are casting up for the big shows and for summer theater. And so shooting in the fall and the spring, we're more likely to get people who are available. Well, people are more likely to be available. So it's not just a matter of pushing it back. And people have already taken the time off of work, and because at this level of production, no one's really making a living doing this in our cast. It's not like they can just request more time off from work. It's something that has to be negotiated with each individual employer. So much of that money's been spent, and when it comes time to, or when it would come time to film again, whenever that is, we would have to curtail the scope of the project. I wouldn't be able to film the same project that we'd intended. Now, there's been talk of finishing it in a different format, maybe a motion comic or a high quality comic book or an audio drama, but personally I don't find any of those really satisfying, because they're not the show. They're not what we began with. And so I'm hopeful that we can find a solution. Back before the bars closed, about a week ago, I had a chance to meet with some of the cast and crew, including the director, Kat Ogden, and we brainstormed some ideas and came up with a pretty workable solution, I think, for reconceiving the structure of Season 4. Not the narrative of Season 4, but its structure, in a way that would allow us to shoot with fewer people in smaller contained locations while preserving all the salient narrative beats for the season, and make the whole thing still live action. Whether or not that will happen, I don't know, because when we were meeting and coming up with this, the bars were still open. They're not anymore, and we're standing at the edge of a potential full lockdown of the state, and that we don't know when that might come back up, and we also don't know how many waves of quarantine we'll have to go through. The Spanish flu of 1918 came in 3 waves, and it was the second one that was the deadliest. We're looking at, if with the tactic of flattening the curve out, to ease the burden on the healthcare system of potentially as long as 18 months before we have a vaccine and life could return to some semblance of normal. That other world that we're going to arrive to when Starship House finally lands. So, we're trying at this point to hit a target while the target is moving, and so are we. So I know that Zoe wants to make this show and wants to make it at the quality level that we've done before, because we're so close to completing this story that we began 10 years ago. That was another thing that kind of got lost in all the pandemic news, was that 10 years ago we were filming season 1 of Journey Quest. And just a dramatic pause there as I go into a momentary reverie. So we're hopeful that JQ4 will just need a retweaking and will come out as a piece of film and not have to change media in order to complete its story. Because, well, honestly, I don't know that we get to season 5 if we can't finish season 4 as expected. And that would be suckage, as Shakespeare put it. What else am I working on? Also, so I'm working on the novel as well, The Fatal Frontier. It's been coming along nicely with the Pond adaptation out of the way. I can focus pretty much all of my writing time on The Fatal Frontier. Unfortunately, the writing time is not the as child-free as it used to be. With the kids hunkering down with us, and I love them, and it's delightful to have them home. We're building wonderful family memories, and that's great. But I've had to basically have my daily word count for what I can expect to get done, just because of the difficulty of working in a household filled with belching children who constantly want to be with you. So it's a delightful problem to have, but it has slowed progress down a bit. Also working on Liberty Cabbage. I mentioned it last month, talking to James. A sketch comedy show that could be done, very low budget, very few people, with the idea of using the same sort of scenarios over and over again to amortize costs. So all of a sudden, the fact that this show would be done with very, very few people for very low cost, and that it could be done under what the current gathering limit is in the state, means that this might get kicked into production now, because we need to create something, and we need to figure out some new model of how we can work. The film community, Zoe, Dead Gentleman, Barefoot Media, how we can continue to create content under quarantine conditions so that we don't wind up having to shutter. But then again, we don't know what the rules will be in a day from now or an hour from now on where you can gather and how many people can be with you. So I'm hopeful that that's something that we can be doing soon. We have the backing of the studio on it to move forward, and it seems like everyone's doesn't have to go to the office these days, so that argues for some more availability. But then again, we're trying to flatten the curve and keep this virus from spreading at a rate that would overwhelm the healthcare system. I know I'm repeating myself now, but it helps me deal with it by talking my way through it. It's a tactic of mine. I talk through dialogue while I'm working it out. Oftentimes Camille comes into a room and finds me talking to myself. Now I'm talking to you, though there's a couple hours of a delay in it. I'm just wandering now. Aren't we all? Okay, what am I reading right now? Moving on to the next bit. So I picked up a biography of Mel Brooks last time I was at Powell's in Portland, which may have to shutter. I think they've laid off something like 500 of their employees. Largest bookstore in the world, and it's closed, and I hope it can survive, because it's been a destination every time I head to Oregon, or at least down the I-5 corridor there. Anyway, I picked up this biography of Mel Brooks by Patrick McGilligan called Funny Man. And I've always been curious about Brooks's career, because I grew up on some of his movies, particularly Spaceballs, which was when I was 13, was the funniest damn movie I'd ever seen. I could recite it. That was a period where I essentially memorized the movie. And in the last couple of years, as I've been aging, well, of course we're always aging, but as I crossed 40 and have started to doubt, occasionally, am I in the right field? Have I chosen the right kind of work for my life? And then I recall, well, hang on, Mel Brooks was nearly 50 when he made his first movie, and he's done quite good for himself. So I picked up his biography to read. What's his story right there, and I'm only about a third of the way through it. I'm up to about the mid-50s right now, and it's a fascinating story of growing up very poor in a Jewish neighborhood in New York. He was the youngest of four sons, and he doesn't remember his father because his father died at 36 while young Melvin was still in diapers. And so he almost has no memories of him. And all four of his brothers fought in the war. He joined as well and was stationed briefly in Europe. I think he was 18 or so. He was born in 1926. So he was 17 or 18 around the conclusion of the war. And one of his brothers he told the story, was a belly gunner on a B-17 Flying Fortress, and was on a mission over Germany when his guns jammed. And in order to protect the plane and himself, he had to take off his gloves, which of course they're 5 miles up, so his hands instantly froze and swelled up. But still, with his hands frozen, managed to fix the gun and get back in the fight. And later they were, I don't know if it was the same mission or not, I don't recall, but his brother was shot down and finished the rest of the war in a POW camp. And the first thing he did when he landed was he threw away his dog tags because, and this I was flabbergasted by this, Jewish servicemen had an H on their dog tags to show their religious preference, H for Hebrew. You're fighting Nazi Germany and you're tagging which of your soldiers are Jewish. That's just... Anyway, so he threw those away immediately, survived the war and made it back home. And so to get back to Melvin Brooks, Melvin Kaminsky, actually, was started doing some entertainment, entertaining the soldiers, and then when he came back to New York, got involved in writing. And his early career was working with Sid Caesar, who he had known or had met when he was like 14 and doing busboy stuff and occasionally helping out with entertainment in the Catskills resorts about 100 miles from New York. Anyway, over the course of his time, he began to write for Caesar, all the way through Caesar's Hour, with that legendary writer's room that included Carl Reiner and Neil Simon and Mel Tolkien and others, all of whom went on to have just incredibly distinctive careers. And we haven't gotten to the movies yet, but the thing that has struck me and been such a surprise about this is he was a total asshole. I don't like to judge the people I'm reading about, but I mean, he's cheating on his pregnant wife, he's cutting and abrasive, stealing credit for jokes, bombastic, just a lot of personality traits I find abhorrent, and I hope that there's a mollification later on. If there's not, I'm like, well, it goes to that old adage, don't meet your heroes. It's easy to idolize from a distance. Anyway, it's interesting. It's not pulling any punches, and it's giving us a portrait of the man, warts and all. Apparently, this fellow Patrick McGilligan, the author, has done a number of show business biographies, and this is what he's known for. The book is really thorough, and it was published last year too. So the interviews with Brooks are still pretty fresh. Anyway, that's Funny Man. I also read Star Trek Stellar Cartography by Larry Nemecek, which was a lot of fun. It was a Christmas gift from Camille, and it's a big tome book that you open up, and there are 10 separate maps of the Star Trek universe that are of different regions of the space from different spacefaring people's perspectives. There's a Klingon map and a Romulan map, a Vulcan one. It's got one that is of the Federation and of the Alpha and the Beta quadrants. My favorites were ones that showed the entire Milky Way with the 4 quadrants on it, and a map of the battles of the Dominion War, which had everything from Cardassia and Bajor and Deep Space Nine from that wonderful show. And the book that accompanied that gave context to each of the maps, was written as an actual history that took key events from all of the Star Trek shows. The Stellar Cartography came out only 2 years ago, so it has all the events from every one of the shows, from original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery. And even some of the setup for Picard, presented as history. So you get to see some of your favorite characters and some of your favorite episodes referenced, not as fiction, but as entities in the historical record with each of these maps. So that was a delight, and actually made me appreciate the earlier, or I should say, the Trek fiction set earlier in the canon than the forefront, which is the Star Trek Picard right now. So what am I watching right now? Well, Star Trek Picard, for one. It just had its penultimate episode, dropped on last Thursday, and I'm very much looking forward to the conclusion of the season. Earlier I'd mentioned that it felt, I was a little wary about it, because after a phenomenally promising pilot, it seemed to wander a bit as it was building its cast, or building its crew, I should say. It's like each episode seemed to add one new character and had an A-plot that sort of was related to the arc of the season, but in the last few episodes it's gotten just fantastic, and my goodness, I'm looking forward to the finale. I can't really talk about it more than without giving away heavy spoilers, but there was I was moved by the last episode. And it feels to me that this Star Trek Picard gets right how to do a sequel 30 years after the source material. I was disappointed very much by the conclusion of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and Blade Runner was an excellent homage to the first movie while being distinct and trying to tell a story about new characters while showing a bit of what happened to the original cast. But only in Picard have I really seen something where you take that key characters from that original cast and you show them 30 years later in a way that feels genuine. Like they haven't been frozen in amber this whole time. The world has changed around them, and the needs and the perspective of the old Picard are not the needs and the perspective of the younger Picard. The core is still there, the philosophy and the drive, but he's made mistakes, and he's attempting to reconcile for those. And while the world is one that he doesn't quite recognize because the politics and the allegiances have changed, he's still the same morally upright individual, and he's fighting for what he believes in at the capacity that he can. And so when you see now in Picard, when there's a reference to something that happened some 30 years ago, it doesn't feel like sort of the pandering, oh, I remember that happened with the Star Wars sequels, but it actually feels like you're meeting an old friend and a reconnection there. And I mentioned this before in the early episodes of Coddiwomple. One of the things I should say I love so much about Star Trek is that The Next Generation premiered when I was 10 years old. And I can remember watching season 1 episodes on my parents' bed in the cul-de-sac in San Antonio, Texas in 1987. Like, it is a connection to my childhood, to my young adulthood, to parenthood, and now this unbroken line of science fiction that is utopian and hopeful. The idea that the future is going to be a better place. It's going to be marvelous and full of technological wonders, and we're going to be, explorers, and we're going to make wonderful discoveries. We're not going to be conquerors, and we're going to put all this shit that's holding us back behind us. I love that idea. I find it hopeful, and that's what I'm looking for in my fiction these days. I don't really care for the bleak as much. which is odd because I just finished the third season of Castlevania on Netflix, which is the anime adaptation of lore from the video game franchise. And it's actually really well done. I don't know that there's been a better video game adaptation into film and TV. I thought that The Witcher was excellent, but The Witcher adaptation is based on the novels, not on the games. The first The thing about the Castlevania universe, though, is just it's so bleak. No one is good. No one gets to be happy, and after a while, that just becomes kind of tedious. It becomes kind of one note. It can be as cool as it is. It's you're fighting the forces of hell. Dracula's got a technologically advanced castle that can move through time. Yeah, I mean it's cool. But I'm not watching it for deep truths about human nature. I'm watching it because it's written by Warren Ellis, and I don't have to think about it when I watch it. But it does get a little not disappointing, because I didn't really expect much from it, but it feels like it could be more. But there's just not much to hang it on there, and that where there are chances to do more with it, and the dialogue is clever, and there were some laugh out loud moments this season. But when it's trying to do its big reveals or its big, action links where setups for the season are brought together and brought to light, the response, instead of it being a shocked, oh wow, how insightful, how well set up, is kind of a muted, well, yeah. I mean, that's not surprising at all. Anyway, maybe I'm just being a little harsher than I should to it, because I've kind of lost my... I don't have much tolerance for disaster porn, in a way. It's why I stopped watching The Walking Dead. Was, one of the rules of storytelling is that the audience doesn't suffer in vain, right? Like, you can have stories that are sad, and you can have stories where the protagonist fails or dies, but bleakness for its own sake is not effective and is not realistic. We are a hopeful species. We tell our stories to remind ourselves who we are and to keep going. And it doesn't take much to be bleak. It's not very difficult. It doesn't ask much of the audience or of the storyteller. And you can have stories where your protagonist fails. There's Braveheart, Gladiator. These are movies where your protagonist dies at the end, but dies in a way that leads to a moral victory, that inspires people and promises for there being change, even though in the events of the movie the world is still locked in a terrible state. It promises for success or hope in the future. And shows like Walking Dead, Castlevania, others just seem to be saying, no, the world is a lost cause, but here's a bunch of cool fights. And it's like the opposite of a children's cartoon that's nothing but fluff and happiness. It's not more it's not better just because it's bleak or for adults. Man, see, this is why I do multiple drafts of what I write, or I like to have someone else here to talk to. I feel like like I'm talking in circles or not making a very good point. It's only been a week into quarantine. I don't think I'm going crazy yet. I don't think I have cabin fever. We'll see. This is sort of an introvert's paradise. I get to stay home. The work is all the same. It's just now more people are in my space constantly. All work and no play makes Matt something. So what am I playing right now? Well, there's two games. We got Doodle for his 8th birthday, which was at the beginning of this month, 8 years ago. A game that he'd been watching YouTube videos of for a long time, Super Mario Maker 2, which is a delightful little game. He loves the Mario world. We got him a Luigi stuffy for his birthday, which goes with his Link and Mario stuffies. His favorite shirts are his Mario Kart shirts, and he wants to know where his Mario jammies are at the end of the day. He loves the world. And what's not to like? It's happy, it's colorful, it's bright, the music is lovely. When Mario dies, he just sort of freezes and jumps out of frame. He looks more surprised and alarmed than dead. Um, and what Super Mario Maker, the series, has done that's really just smart from a business decision is it has a story mode. It lets you play through in your traditional, side scroller Mario world, but it lets you build your own levels, and it lets you upload those levels online and play other people's levels. So for $4 a month, so Nintendo sells you the game, then its player base is making content for that game that Nintendo gets to charge the player base to share with one another. Like marketing wise, it's brilliant. And then people get to design their own content. So maybe it's training a new generation of game designers, or at the very least, it's raising in the cultural awareness what goes into good level design. Doodle is so lovely though because he doesn't like conflict. He doesn't like movies at all. He likes sort of an Act One version of a movie or a show. I like the world the way it is. I don't want to see my characters who I love in danger or in awkward situations or feeling embarrassed. So he doesn't like movies. And the levels he builds on Super Mario Maker, there are no enemies, there are no pits, there's no way for Mario to die. So he just runs around jumping happily and gathering different coins. It's delightful. And he plays for over and over again, and it's engaging different circuits in the brain because he's building. It's kind of like, in a way, digital Legos in the Marvel in the Mario universe. So that's great. And I played it a little bit, and I haven't been able to get very far because, again, I'm not as twitchy as I used to be. So it's there's definitely a ceiling of difficulty on levels that I can pass. What's also really neat about it, though, is it's not just one tile set of Mario assets. There's, I think, about 6 different settings you can put your game in. You can do it in the modern Switch. I think it's Super Mario Brothers U setting, but you can also do it with Super Mario 3 assets, the original classic Super Mario Brothers assets, Super Mario World, one of the Game Boy ones. So it's hitting all the nostalgia buttons for me when I play, because it's all new levels, but it's with games that I played when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and a teenager. So that's a blast. The other game I've been playing though is one I picked up, a little different thematically, Diablo 3, which is available for the Switch, and I never got into the Diablo games on console, on PC, because I was never a very big PC gamer. And, it's fun. It's mindless fun. Equip your character, run around, bash the crap out of demons in a heaven versus hell, very bleak universe, yet again. So it's not really engaging any any higher level functions. It's just sometimes therapeutic to wade through masses of enemies, and it's my first playthrough. I'm playing a barbarian, just maxing out damage with everything. So it's therapeutic to wander around and bash zombies and demons with a giant stick. It helps relieve stress. The writing is that sort of good, terrible writing of video games, where it's decent enough to communicate a little bit of character here and there, but nobody reacts the way that they absolutely should. You have 2 NPCs, one who from the beginning of the game, every 5th dialogue is about how she never knew her mother and wondered what happened to her. So you're setting up from frame 1, of course we're going to run into mother later on, and of course, oh look, there's mother. And after this reunion, after this, 20-year-old girl who spent her entire life wondering where her mother was and why she left her, and these strange mystic powers that seem to be manifesting with her as she ages, runs into her mother, and they have 3 lines of dialogue before they just stand next to each other quietly, waiting for you to engage in either of them. It's ridiculous. It's funny. It meets the needs of the medium, but I don't know. If it were more realistic, I think they'd probably have more to say to one another. But then again, you're running into hell bashing Satan with a stick. That's the game. You're not really looking for realism there. So once the kids go to bed, I wheel the TV over on its little base to the couch and pull up Diablo 3 and go demon bashing. It's fun, and it kills some of the hours in the evening. So let's move on to questions. Here, from Mendoza. What does vague do? Is this not how it works? Vague, for the third spell that Perf has memorized in the Journey Quest story, is a spell that just, well, there's not really a standard definition to it. It just makes any situation awkward, and whoever it's cast upon unable to speak clearly. Makes it vague. I mean, so yes, that's not how it works. Also from Mendoza, what are some JQ Season 1 writing decisions you'd like to either remove or add? Okay, well, there's several. The most prominent, though, would be there's the joke, there's the gag where Ren is writing in her journal and ranting, and then we cut to a shot of what she's writing, and it's a picture of Trogdor the Burninator. I would definitely take that out because, well, for a number of reasons. One, it's a reference to a real-world thing, so it breaks suspension of disbelief. Another one is that she's writing with a quill pen, but the picture of Trogdor was drawn with a Sharpie, so it's clear it's not something that she was able to create. And also, it's not who the character became. She might have been ranting, but maybe we just have a bunch of other doodles there. It's a joke I probably would have just taken out. I know there needed to be a beat for a release of tension there before she hears the scream and says, "Oh well, they're up early," and goes after the party. But I don't know. It feels like a swing and a miss now, looking back at it. Another thing I would do is I would make it clear that Grelnock and Yart were part of the orcs before the big sword fight, where the sword uses Perf to kill most of the orcs. Maybe some sort of setup to where we could show them in the background when Rilk is talking to Kern about how they've captured the Orc Slayer's allies, maybe have them dispatched to get firewood or something. I mean, the reason they're not there is because we couldn't have them there on the same day. And as written originally, Ren's story was going to be a completely separate story from the Perf, Nara, Caro, and Glorian storyline, one that was available only on the DVD or maybe with some BTS footage to where she was popping up in places and we're like, oh, haven't we seen that character before? Like a good example is when Nara comes to the Riddle Pillar and we see Ren duck behind it. The idea was that originally in the main story of Journey Quest, we would only catch glimpses of this pigtailed bard, but we never really learn who she is. We see her duck behind the Riddle Pillar, we see her drink a potion and vanish, but her story is separate, and you have to go somewhere else to find it. And when that was the thinking, Grelnock and Yart didn't need to be connected to the orcs elsewhere, and so we didn't have them scheduled on that day. But when we wound up having to combine the stories in the way that works much better now, and it's proven to be the way that the series should have gone from the beginning. And it's actually kind of remarkable how cobbled together that first season is, considering all the things that happened that nearly crippled it, and made it so that we couldn't finish. It's remarkable that it holds together so well. Anyway, I would now go back and make sure that we see Grelnock and Yart in the wider group of orcs before the battle. Now, of course, we'd have to do something to explain why the sword didn't kill them as well, but it would be nice to sort of tie them to those events earlier. And then finally, what I would do is when Yart at the end reveals what they want, how they want to be remembered in the epic, and Grelnock says, "Can I have hair?" and Yart says, "I have always yearned to be a female." I think we could have softened the delivery on that and made it less of a joke. It reads too much as a joke, where the joke is, haha, he has gender dysphoria, or they have gender dysphoria. rather than this is a character who part of their arc is going to be accepting and who they are and finding a way to transform into their true self. And I think that it was too blunt in retrospect, and because of that, could be misinterpreted. And that's one that if I could have back, that is the main thing I would fix. From Rob McLennan, what would you consider to be the music of my youth? Well, so one thing that amuses Camille is how I have come to embrace more popular music now. I didn't used to like it. I used to be a real music snob because my parents were both music educators, classically trained musicians, choir masters. My dad was an organist. My mom taught piano and voice. And so, I grew up with a lot of classical music in the household. And the only popular music that we really listened to, which is when we were on, long car trips or whatnot, were the Beatles and the Beach Boys. So I wasn't really interested in much anything else. Though by high school, I had sort of started gravitating towards Billy Joel. And so from high school through early college, Billy Joel was who I listened to the most. And I think it's because so many of his songs are stories. They really are telling a tale. And a lot of music does this, but Joel's music was not what I typically associated with popular music in the stories that he's telling. And they evoked a real feeling, not just something that's hummable and you want to sing along to, but like Piano Man's a sense of loss and longing that hits me every time I hear it. That's what I would consider the music of my youth. From Merkworky, what are some chapter books that you'd give your kids to read? Well, the chapter books that I love the most were The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. And I remember, I think I still have one of them that I got from a Scholastic book fair. In 1985, there was book 2 of the series, The Black Cauldron, which had been a Disney animated feature that came out that year. And I saw the book with the movie poster on it, and so I ordered that book. And then when I read it, I read the books out of order. I think I went like books 2, 4, 1, 5, 3, 5 or something. First time I read them, I didn't realize that the series was in order, and I just, look, here's another Prydain book. And so I read it and didn't care about the context. And then I read it in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when I was in middle school, because the middle school library had all 5 books. And I fell in love with that series. And that was the series that made me love fantasy as a genre. If you haven't read it, it's a marvelous series for children. It's based on Welsh mythology, on an epic known as the Mabinogion, and probably butchering the pronunciation. But it's the lovely story of Taran Pigkeeper, the Princess Eilonwy, the Bard Fflewddur Fflam, and their quests to stop Aron, the evil warlord god. I forget which exactly. And what's great about this story also is it very much feels like The Hobbit, and less The Lord of the Rings and more The Hobbit, in that it is clearly written for children. It takes big emotions into account, as well as desires for adventure and whimsy, but it also doesn't pull punches. Like I remember when my father first read me The Hobbit, at the end when we learned that so many of the dwarves died in the Battle of Five Armies, I didn't cry, but I remember thinking, oh wow, no, there is a cost to this. Not everyone makes it through. And that was the same in the Chronicles of Prydain. You have characters who you love and who your protagonists love who don't make it all the way through. And it's sobering in a way. It leaves you as a reader, when you reach the end of the book, feeling like you have grown up with Taran and the others, or rather that Taran has reached a new level of maturity and is no longer the boy by the time he emerges at the end of the storyline, when it ends. And I learned a few things from that. One, that that kind of pain is necessary for good character growth. Obvious stuff that you learn later on, but this is a thing I got as a kid. And that stories need to end. They're not supposed to go on ad infinitum, and they lose their punch and their message the longer they're dragged out, which is, counter to so much of American storytelling, which is, hey, if there's a good thing, let's milk it until it's dead, until you hate it, until you just stop watching it because it's too bleak, rather than let's tell a contained story that ends with you wishing that there were more. So it compels you to go back and view it again, and there's something about containing a piece. It's like a piece of music. It has to end. You can't just go on forever. That's what gives it its power. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox now. From Rival Guy, do you have any interest in writing a rock opera? No. I mean, I might. I have no idea what would be involved. I mean, I should say I haven't ever thought, I'd like to write a rock opera. Maybe if the opportunity presented itself, if I were suddenly graced with hundreds of hours of free time, being locked inside a house with belching children, maybe. But no, it's not something I've considered. But maybe that'll change. I don't know. And finally, from Every Door Repairman, lightning round. Scrubbing bubbles or Lysol? Scrubbing bubbles. Flower or vegetable garden? Vegetables. When was the last time you stayed up past 2 a.m? I honestly don't remember. I begin to fade by around 11 p.m. nowadays. Toast, burnt to a crisp or barely crunchy? Barely crunchy, because barely crunchy is better for soaking up butter, and it's great if you're making a sandwich with toast. The outside is crispy, so there's that nice crunch, but the interior stays a little bit moist, so it's great for soaking up the sauce. Animal crackers or Mother's cookies? Cookies, obviously. What's the lamest dessert that people try to pass off as dessert? Anything with Jell-O in it. Security system or a dog? Pass. Cologne or personal musk? Aftershave, actually. A large crowd or a small party? Small party. What is in the trunk of your car right now? Reusable shopping bags, I think. Game room or computer room? Computer room, because it can also be a game room. If you were to pick any movie to become reality, which one would it be? Oh, wow. I have no idea. I'd have to think about that one. Charmin or Angel Soft? Whatever's available. What was your last impulse buy? Diablo 3. More useful at the moment, toilet paper or hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer, because toilet paper won't kill the virus. Hot shower or cold shower? That depends. Have I just worked out, or has it been 3 days of taking care of feral children? If it's been 3 days of taking care of feral children without a bath, I'd like a hot shower. If I just worked out, a cold one. Terry Pratchett or Douglas Adams? Terry Pratchett. Night owl or early riser? Well, since I crap out at about 11 p.m., early riser. Imperial or metric system? Metric. Rather be painfully aware or blissfully ignorant? Painfully aware. Rather be part of the Rebel Alliance from the Star Wars universe or part of Starfleet Command from Star Trek universe? Oh, you know the answer to that. Starfleet all the way. Rather be able to run 100 miles per hour or fly at 1 mile per hour? The run. Run for 100 miles per hour. Rather have too many friends or too few? Too many. What other content would you recommend in the vein of JQ or Gamers? Well, you can find you can find a whole bunch of really great independent fantasy series on the Fantasy Network. But if you're looking for the kind of web series I like, the two that stand out the most to me, there's one that from Spokane that was starting, I don't think they've had a new episode in years and years, like 7 or 8 years. It was called Transsolar Galactica. Definitely R-rated, but hilarious sci-fi web series. They had a Kickstarter for season 2. I remember backing it. I don't know whatever happened to it, though. I don't think it was ever created. And then the best web series I've ever seen was And At by Gabe Congdon, Aaron Buman, and Jesse Lee Keeter from Seattle, which is this sort of whimsical stream of consciousness, Spike Jonze kind of short films with the most remarkable imaginative production design you've ever seen. These guys are cardboard aficionados, and while the technical quality isn't always great, the writing and the performance and the feelings that are evoked watching it are an utter delight. Their Hamlet is, I remember watching it with Aaron and Gabe. Ben and I were watching it with Aaron and Gabe, and they showed us their cut of Hamlet. And then asked, what did you think? And I thought, and this is absolutely true, it's like in film school, the second year graduation requirement for where I went to school at AFI, for 5 of the 6 disciplines was you had to do a short film that was intended to go out onto the festival circuit. And what we'd seen there with Hamlet was better than any of the ones that came out of my year. It was delightful and whimsical and hilarious, and it left me wanting so much more. And sadly, I don't know that there'll ever be any more And At, because and At, if you want to search for it, it's not with letters, it's the ampersand and the at symbol. Because I think the house that the 3 of them rented and lived in when they did so much of this work is no longer there. It was torn down, I believe, for an expansion of the road. But you can find the material on YouTube. It is utterly marvelous and delightful. And that's all I have for you. What movie reality would I like to be real? I don't know. I'll have to think on that. Maybe I'll have an answer for you next month when we'll have been in quarantine for 5 weeks. It's not scheduled to lift. Well, the earliest it would lift in this state is the final week of April. So we'll see. In the meantime, this is the captain of Starship House signing off. Be well, stay inside, and wash your goddamn hands.